All right, if I can have everybody's attention, really quick. For those of you that don't know me by chance, my name is Des Stewart, proud superintendent here in Gainesville ISD, and I just want to take an opportunity to first and foremost say thank you for being here, to hear the factual information. Today, again, I'm not going to challenge anyone's level of intelligence in here and read to you word for word. That's what I don't do when I present. But what I will ask that as we engage in this conversation, if there are questions that you may have, please, if you'll just stop me, if you'll raise your hand, I'll be more than happy to stop as we get into the presentation, and I'll address any and all questions. Once we get to that point, again, raise your hands. I'll be more than happy to address those questions. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about this evening was included on this video, but I'll try to go a little bit further in depth as we talk through each one of those individual projects. All right, so our long-range facility planning process was a process that involved multiple stakeholders, i.e., we got input from faculty, staff, parents. There was even some input from some students that was taken into account as we talked about what does the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years in Gainesville ISD look like. That's one of the biggest responsibilities of being the superintendent of schools. It's not just to take care of what's to be done here in the current, but to also think about years down the road, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, especially as you look at our community and how it's changing. So this just kind of details all of what took place during that process. The assessment of the campus and the department needs, input was gathered, recommendation was made, bond was called, and of course, it all ends with election day on May 3rd. So this bond really addresses three key pillars of needs here in GISD. The first being the enhancement of educational facilities. Two of our buildings are over 65 years of age, which, of course, the junior high school is our oldest operational instructional space, followed closely by Edison, okay? Those two campuses are going to receive the bulk of the work. But as said in the video, this bond package touches every one of our campuses, but it's also going to provide some flexibility, and I'll talk about that as we get a little deeper into the presentation. Safety and security. During our conversations with our parent advisory committee meetings, during conversations with our faculty and staff, the number one concern that exists within Gainesville and within schools across Texas is safety and security, okay? And so this bond is going to help us to address a lot of the things that have been outlined as either being in need of improvement, deficiencies, or just non-existent, just to be very transparent. And then infrastructure and campus improvements. As we talk about safety and security, we have some of our surveillance systems that are out. And again, these are the older campuses. PA systems, there's not the ability for the principal to call into a classroom or a classroom to call to the office if in the event there was an emergency situation. But also secure entryways or the vestibules. I got asked earlier, what is a secure vestibule? A secure vestibule is generally when you go into an educational space, you walk into a secure area, you get vetted, what is your business here, this, that, and the other. The front office staff checks your credentials, check your license, make sure, that everything is clear, and then you gain access to the building. Well, currently, of course, you go back a couple years ago, we did secure vestibules over at the intermediate campus, and we did one over at Chalmers, okay, which were huge additions to those campuses. And I can't tell you the amount of praise we received from a lot of those parents saying, thank you for putting that in those campuses. Well, that's only 2 of 5, okay? Edison, once you gain access through that first door, you have free access to the building. The junior high, once you gain access to that first set of doors, you have access to the building. In the high school has somewhat of a secure vestibule, but if you catch that side door open, you have free access to the building. So we really want to look to shore up the safety and security in those particular areas. So what does the bond cover? As mentioned, this bond is going to touch every one of our campuses. When you have two campuses that are 60 plus years old, of course, those campuses are going to need a little bit more a little bit more work than just say our newest campus, which is the high school, okay? So, and I'll try to talk through some of the big ticket items or the big items as we talk about the bond overview. At Edison, right now, at Edison, Chalmers, and the intermediate, all three of those campuses are at 100% capacity, okay? What does that mean? That means that, one thing that we pride ourselves, one of the many things we pride ourselves in here in Gainesville is we're able to keep our our staff to teacher, student to staff ratio very, very low, okay? By law, we have to be at 22 to 1. Our classes right now are at about 19, 20-ish to 1, okay? So it's below, which makes for smaller classes, and we want that. We want our teachers to be able to engage with our kids and not have to have 25, 30 little bodies running around the classroom, okay? Because, as I've mentioned before, all three campuses are at 100% capacity. What does that mean for Dean Stewart, the superintendent? As these houses keep going up and these apartment complexes soon to follow go up, and we start getting more bodies into our buildings, we're going to have to either increase the classroom size, which I don't know, when is the last time you've been in a class with 27, 28 little ones? That's a tall task, okay? Or what we do is we then begin the process of standing up portable buildings, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, safety and security is we can't educate kids until we keep them safe and secure, as well as our staff. I want to make sure that my staff are able to go home to their husbands, wives, significant others, their families, just like I want my kids to be able to go home to mom, dad, uncle, auntie, or whomever their parent or guardians may be. So that's going to be taken care of. We're going to be doing some classroom additions on those three campuses, Edison, Chalmers, as well as the intermediate. There's going to be classroom additions on all three of those campuses to accommodate that extra growth. And along with the secure vestibule, and again, like I said, when you look at Edison and you look at the junior high, you're going to see the bulk of the work, fire alarms, PA, the gym. Edison, let's just be honest, I can't call it a gym. That's more of a space for our kids to play in. Okay, we're not trying to build American Airlines Center, okay? It's just a standard basic gym other than what we have currently. Cafeteria expansion. The cafeteria right now is too small, okay? So this is going to allow us to expand the cafeteria, but also expand the library and then the flooring. That flooring in that building is the original flooring. So to rip that floor up and put something new down for our students currently, but also well into the future. Down to Chalmers, I'll hit on the secure fencing because I got to ask this question. There's been many, many unfunded mandates that have been passed down from Austin, okay? All centered around, ever since the Uvalde shooting, there's been a lot of unfunded mandates that have come down to shoot that, the state is telling us you need to do this, you have to do that. Oh, by the way, there's no additional funding that goes with that, okay? So we're going to have to find a way, unless here within this legislative session they find money and I'm hearing they're going to try to up the security allotment, but it's not going to be enough for us to cover all of the fencing, ballistic glass or ballistic film, and things that are being required by the state. Yes, ma'am.
I saw a thing earlier that I was curious about. People wondering if there are any grants available to go with these state-funded mandates and how available those are.
And we're applying for grants. Trust me, we're applying for. Matter of fact, that's how we got our intruder program. If you look back in the back, right underneath that camera, you see that little white little box right there. We secured a $220,000 grant to take care of that. That was another unfunded mandate. Every school had to have some type of alert messaging system if in the event they had an emergency, et cetera. So we were able to pay for that with the grant. So yes, we are looking for grants. We're trying to do any and everything possible to secure enough funding to take care of those unfunded mandates. Great question.
But how easy are those to get?
I'm not going to say they're easy because you got 1,300 school systems that are applying for them, and keep in mind, we're going up against the Houstons, the Dallases, the Austins, and the list goes on and on. So you have 1,200 plus school systems that are fighting for this small pot of money. So hopefully we'll see some additional funding come at the conclusion of this legislative session. So, but yes, we are applying for any and all grants that we can find that are applicable to helping us fulfill that need. Okay, great question. So we got going down to the intermediate, the secure fencing, again, another that unfunded mandate, but fire alarm, parking lot, playground, et cetera. The intermediate is one of our newer campuses, so therefore, and we've done a lot of work with that over the years, so the need is not as great at the intermediate campus, but there's still things that need to be taken care of, i.e. the classroom addition and the secure fencing. The junior high. Junior high is the big one, okay? The junior high, as I said earlier, is our oldest instructional space that we're currently using. We're gonna look to take care of the secure vestibule, enclosed F hall. You know, as we talk about space and truly trying to make sure we're maximizing space, what enclosing F hall is gonna allow us to do is bring sixth grade back to the junior high. Right now, we probably occupy about 40% of that building because it's an old high school. And right now, we only have 7th and 8th grade there. So you take 200 kids per class, 400 kids on a high school campus, there's lots of empty space that can be utilized with students. So if we can enclose that F hall, do some reconfiguration, we're able to bring 6th grade back to that campus and then begin the process of, you know, realignment to change up and hopefully add some more space on our campuses. One of the things I'll talk about real quick, because I'm sure all of you have driven down Grand and seen the administration building, the administration building that we're going to have our grand opening next month, and we'll announce that to our public because we want you to be able to go out and see that building. I've been approached by I don't know how many people that have gone to school in that building and can't wait to see what it looks like on the inside. But we will be announcing that. But once we move into that new administration building, the question then becomes, what are you going to do with this building? Okay, our current Head Start program is in 2 double-wide portable buildings, okay? As we talk about safety and security, if you pulled on those doors hard enough, chances are you're probably gonna get in, okay? So what that's gonna allow us to do is then move the Head Start program to this building, to put them in a brick and mortar building, more secure building, but also allow us to then take some of our pre-K kids from Edison in hopes of creating more space, okay? So if we can remove some of those pre-Kers and bring them over here, that'll help us to create space in addition to the classroom additions. So it's really going to provide us with an opportunity to maximize space at Edison, Chalmers, as well as the intermediate. Cafeteria expansion, library expansion, the new roof right now, that roof is in need of repair right now. And Joe, a couple years ago, we were at about $2 million. What would you say an estimate on that roof would be right now?
We're closer to 3, sir. It is the original roofing system. It is 65 years old.
So that's a $3 million roof, regardless of what if the bond passes or fails. That's a $3 million roof we got to take care of. The RTUs, which is another one. Those of you especially, I mean, regardless of what campus you have kids at, we've had issues over the last few years because the life expectancy of an RTU, which is rooftop unit, is about 20 years. Okay, we have several. And I hate to guesstimate, but would you say?
There's 54 there total. Of the 54, approximately 40 of them are in excess of 20 years old.
So what does that mean? That means when it's burning up hot in August, September, and they're going out, our kids are burning up in their classroom because we can't keep the classes cool. When the temperatures change and it gets cold, we can't heat the buildings because they're going out. And every time they go out, we have to rent a crane, which is about $2,000. And then they have to come drop a new unit on top of the building and go through that whole process. So that's why you receive notifications from myself saying, hey, bear with us, classes are hot at campus A, we're working to get it taken care of. The units are going out. So this is going to allow us an opportunity to really address the RTU situation on our campuses. Talked about the PA system again. This is at the high school. Secure vestibule and the door locks, another safety mechanism that we're looking to put in place. And this one is super exciting to me. I mean, it's all exciting to me, but part of our mission in GISD is to provide opportunities for kids. There's nothing more that pains me than having to turn a kid away from an opportunity. And right now, because of limited space, we're having to do that at the high school. As we talk about preparing the next line of workers, whether they're going out into the real world or going off to Duke or Michigan State or wherever they may land, We're having to turn kids away from these opportunities that interest them. So we're going to look to add a CTE wing at the high school, okay? And what that is going to allow us to do is to take our culinary arts program, visual arts, robotics, our theater black box, as well as our health sciences program, which is probably right now our biggest program. That program is exploding at the seams. It's going to allow us to put them in an isolated wing and then free up the space that's currently being occupied in those classrooms to utilize for other school use. So all of those renovations, and again, all of these are renovations. The only new builds are your classroom additions on the 3 campuses. And then you got, like I said, you got some, the enclosing of F Hall. But all of that equates to the tune of $58,833,798. All right, so, and I'll just speak to this, and yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What's the ETA of when you think those improvements will be done if we pass on May 3rd?
Safe timetable, Joe?
If the improvements for the bond are completed, we're looking at a 3 to 5 year time frame.
So what happens is May 3rd, we get the results of the bond. Monday morning, Mr. Warren, who is my director of maintenance and operations, Mr. Warren, our architectural partners, we're all meeting in my office first thing Monday morning to start to developing that timeline and start prioritizing, okay? Because when you start talking about the different projects, then what has to happen is they have to then identify the trades, and there's a lot of pre-planning. I wish we could just start turning dirt the next day, but you're talking about a 6 to 8 month window where you really sit there and start planning out those projects, and then once the plans are done, then you begin the process of prioritizing and executing. So, school funding 101. Another question that I got was, we see all these new houses that are going up. You're generating more money in property taxes. And I said, you're absolutely correct. They said, well, what are you doing with all that excess money that you're getting? I said, what you're missing is when property tax value, when your property values increase and we get more in taxes, the state's contribution goes down, okay? Trust me, I would love for it to stay where it is and continue to go up, but that's not the way it works. When we get more in taxes, the state then decreases the amount of money that they contribute to the district. Okay, so in essence, it almost is a wash. You don't see any new money, although you're getting more in taxes. The state is taking away money from you because they say, well, you're getting all this extra money in taxes. That's a key point to note in this whole the school funding. Another question, and I'm popcorning some of these questions that were asking me earlier. I had a question about. I had a gentleman approach me and say, well, Dr. Stewart, y'all have been raising my taxes over the last several years. I'm paying all this extra money in taxes. And you're going to see the chart here further in the presentation. But if you bought a home, just say if your home was $100,000, and I'm just giving arbitrary examples. You bought a home for $100,000. If that home appraises for $500,000 now, you're not, the tax rate can go down, but you're still actually paying more in taxes because your home is valued. You have a higher value in your home, okay? And that's something that we, the school district, do not control. We do not control that. Like I said, we've done nothing but reduce the tax rate. And again, I'm going to show y'all that here in a later slide. It's one of the next ones coming up. So, speaking of the tax impact, I know the $1 million question is, what is the impact upon me? How does that impact me in my pocketbook? If voters approve the bond, this will result in almost a 14-cent tax increase. Now, keep in mind, over the last 18 years, we've lowered our tax rate about 84 cents, okay? There is not another taxing entity that can say that, okay? We've lowered our taxes, done all we could to save our taxpayers money. So here is the chart that I talked about, the 20-year tax rate history. You go back to 2006, right after the bond was passed, $1.71, and you look at how the tax rate has gone down. Took a huge drop in 2007, went up a little bit, and then has gone down continuously up until now at 86 cents. All right, so I don't know why this is showing blank, but The average home in Gainesville, Texas is about $255,000, okay? Average home is about $255,000. So what does that equate to? Is my monthly impact? And I believe it's $13. I believe it's $13. 1803, okay? That's your monthly increase to your mortgage, 1803 or $215.33 annually, okay? If by chance, here's the example with $375,000, $31.97 monthly impact, or an annual of $383.63. If your home is more than that, you'd like to see what that tax impact is to yourself, we have on our website, we have what's called a tax calculator. If you go to the bond website, which is, you can be located on our homepage, you just put in the value of your home and it'll generate all that information for you. Now, I would say, and I'm sure everyone in here has taken advantage of it, please make sure that you're doing all your exemptions, okay? You got to make sure you're taking care of your exemptions. You know, homestead exemption went from 25 to 40, now it's at 100, and there's legislation to raise it to 140. So I would say, please make sure that you're taking care of those homestead exemptions and taking advantage of that. This is something that we, the superintendents of Texas, have fought for years and years and years. You know, when you go to the ballot box, it's going to say in big bold letters, this will result in a tax increase, okay? Why they won't remove that, we've asked and asked and asked, because that's not always the case, okay? The people in Austin are pretty determined to keep this in here. But speaking of the tax increase, if you're 65 and up, okay, 65 and up, and you've done all your exemptions, your taxes are frozen. Now, keep in mind, there are several taxing entities, and that's another recommendation, is that, you know, we have to realize there are multiple taxing entities here within Gainesville. It's not just Gainesville ISD, okay? You know, you got hospital, you got city, you got community college, you got multiple taxing entities. So it's key that you understand, you know, the tax rate of all of those respected entities, okay? But if you're 65 and older, your taxes are frozen. Now, barring you making any type of major renovation, if you have a house and you decide to build a house, add another 3 rooms to your house and whatnot, and again, I don't know what that threshold is, but they say significant improvement to your home, at that point, you could potentially see somebody. But if you make no improvements to your home and you're 65 and up and you've gone through and you applied for your exemptions, your taxes are frozen. Whether it's a $58 million bond or like my people in Prosper, a $4 billion bond, you know, and keep in mind this will be their second $1 billion bond. It has zero impact to our 65 and older population. I'll stop there before I get, because I'm really almost at the end of my presentation, but does anyone have any burning questions that they'd like for me to address? Yes, ma'am.
So I want to preface this with, I don't have kids in school, here, and I'm listening to both sides of this, and I'm here to get more information to know, which way I want to go. Here's my concern. I do think that the kids need to have improved facilities and all that. But when I'm hearing things like the roof has been there, on the junior high, what was it, 65? And Edison still has the original flooring. And then I did have an exchange student that was in the high school last year. Mm-hmm. And so I did go out to the high school. The facilities for the athletics is phenomenal. I mean, it's beautiful. I guess my concern is if we have roofs that are 65 years old, and I'm not saying they don't deserve the nice facilities. I'm not saying that at all. I guess my question is, where's the accountability about the prioritization? Because if we have a roof that's 65 years old and flooring that is however old Edison is, why were those things not addressed before building a beautiful athletic complex? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And my question is, because part of the con that I've been hearing, because I'm trying to hear both sides and come up with a conclusion. What I'm hearing is that there's been a lot of bonds in the past, but we're still in debt to those. So my question is, where's the accountability? How are we going to know? Because I would love because I do teach at the collegiate level.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that having good facilities, having nice facilities, I think that does help with the students want to be there, that the teachers wanted to be there, which improves the education. I think all of those things are so I want to see that improve. I do. I think that's important. I want to know where the accountability is, though, because I fully understand what you're saying. 6 to 8 months for planning and 3 to 5 years to accomplish these things. But if the other things haven't been accomplished, where's the accountability?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I can say, because I've actually had a similar type question brought up as well. Once we get the results from the bond, as we talk about, and this, I can't speak for previous bonds. Okay, I'll speak for Dale Stewart's tenure here. Once we get the results, my plan would then be to have a kind of a bond oversight committee similar to this, where we sit down and for me, giving constant updates to that committee about this is where, okay, after we've gone through the prioritization of the projects, okay, project 1 is going to be this, project 2, 3, 4, 5, and then really being able to count and talk about, where we are as far as progressing towards the completion of that project, while also giving a financial overview, because at the end of the day, people want to know where the dollars are going, okay? If we say we're going to spend, and I'm just throwing round numbers, if we say we're going to spend $30 million on the junior high and all of what it entails, the work that's scheduled to be done, people want to know, are we coming in over budget? Are we coming in under budget? Okay, if we're coming in under budget, good job. The money that's under budget, if we save $5 million, where does that $5 million go? So that's part of that committee, to have those conversations, because at the end of the day, because I had that same question asked to me earlier, just say with this $58 million bond, when it's all said and done, we got $6,000 in the kitty. $6 million, because the projects were done, but we came in under budget, we have $6 million left. Does that fall upon the long discretion of the superintendent to say, this is what we're going to do with that $6 million? Absolutely not. We go back to the bond oversight committee and we say, okay, we all 5 projects or 6 projects or however many projects, we've taken care of that. And then I, as a superintendent, then come to the table and say, okay, here are some other projects that need to be done in the district that were not part of the bond. And then we engage in a conversation on how those dollars are then moved around to take care of other needs throughout the district. It would be kind of like this, like today. I'd send an invitation out to our community, and those that want to have a seat at the table and be informed and have their voices heard will have that opportunity. I've said since I've gotten here, I want to be as transparent as possible. If you really want to know and be a part of that process, I want you at the table. That way, and again, I'm not saying that we always got to agree to disagree. We're always going to agree, but I want to hear I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear the questions that you have. So hopefully I can provide you with the answers so that we can then, so you can have the clarity that you need to speak competently about what's taking place throughout the bond. So that's one of the big things that we're talking about doing. As you talk about the athletic facilities, just to be very honest with you, when we looked at what we were spending in man hours, and when you talk about football fields and baseball fields and softball fields, the striping and all of what the money that we put into that. Now, that turf didn't pay for itself in 1 year, okay? That turf is going to pay for itself over time, okay? But it's greatly reduced the number of man hours that we've had to put out there on those fields, which now presents us with an opportunity to now divert those man hours somewhere else. And then really I'm going to come right to you. And then I look at it like this, from a community standpoint, those fields are utilized more than just by GISD. You got the college who uses those fields. You have our youth sports that utilize those fields, both indoor and outdoor. So when you talk about overall the benefit that provides to our community, it's priceless.
Well, I think it's beautiful, and the first time I was out there, I was really impressed.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just my question is, if we're, the 65-year-old roof was granted not 65 when that was built, but it was still pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
Why wasn't that addressed? And I will tell you, I have only lived here 9 years, so I wasn't around when a lot of that was done.
I got you.
So, I mean, I'm really trying.
Me and you're almost in the same boat. But so the roof was part of the last bond. Well, the roof has been in the bonds, in previous bonds, and I've said with my team, regardless of the outcome of this bond, we're going to have to take care of that roof. Okay. But it's our hope that if the bond is successful, then we can utilize bond dollars to take care of that, as compared to utilizing internal resources, because I have a $34 million budget, okay, of which the bulk of that, 75 to 80% of that, goes to payroll, okay, pay salaries. The remaining 20, lights, seats, stuff, supplies, and also maintenance. So when you think about it, when you start looking at all those things that have to be taken care of, at the end of the day, I can only give so many dollars to Mr. Warren and say, okay, this is what we're going to utilize to take care of different projects throughout the district. RTUs that are going out constantly, this, that, and the other. And so, but now we're at a point where, regardless of how this bond turns out, we're going to have to replace that roof, and it's going to get taken care of. Ms. Preston?
Athletic facilities were built also because it was a new school and we were losing our athletic facilities. We lost our baseball field where the baseball boys played. We weren't going to have the football because the one at the junior high couldn't use that field anymore.
Right.
So that's why also those were built, because if you weren't here, living here at that time, those had to be built for them to be able to play sports.
Mm-hmm.
So
I graduated, I was in the first class to graduate from the high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you that the reason why they had to build a new high school was because during that time, the junior high, the kids couldn't even attend the junior high anymore because it needed to be torn down like it was. And so that was the whole reason the new high school was built. And I graduated, I was the first class to graduate. But if they hadn't have done that, the junior high kids were about to have nowhere to go. So that was why they moved on to the high school.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened, back in 2009. That's how, it had to be done, or there was nowhere for them to go.
Mm-hmm.
You had to build a new school because we didn't have any extra buildings just anywhere in Gainesville.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I kind of want to add on and clarify a little bit. Part of the confusion and frustration with the 05 bond was, yes, the new high school needed to be built, but also part of how bonds work is extra athletic facilities like a new football field should legally be a different bond. And if I'm remembering the story correctly, I was 7 at the time. And kind of what I've heard people talking about is originally the new football stadium was voted down, and they were planning on just using the football stadium at the then high school, now junior high. But then a lot of the things that were promised slowly got taken away, like the new ag facility, and I don't remember what else, but it's a lot of things that since Dr. Stewart has come here, he's worked within those means to get those built that were originally going to be part of the 05 new high school bond, but slowly started disappearing until all of a sudden, hey, we have an extra few $1 million, let's build a football stadium. Which unfortunately that leaves this brand new school board. We've had multiple superintendents since then, with Dr. Stewart being the latest. We have this whole new crew that's trying to go, hey, that wasn't us that built a football stadium despite the vote. We're trying to create what they promised, but please know we're not them. Yes, we have the same name and we're the newest iteration, but we're not the ones who made those decisions.
And thank you for your input as well. As we talk about the $58 million, you know, and I'll come to you in a minute. You know, we had a facility assessment done about 4 years ago. This is 7 for me. About 4 years ago, we had a facility assessment done. That's from a third party who came in and looked at all of our instructional space, not the admin building, not athletic facilities, instructional space only, where kids are in classes. 4 years ago, just to bring all of our campuses back up to par, not to add any new classrooms, not to add any innovative learning spaces, just to take what we currently have and to bring it back up to par, $300 million. That was 4 years ago. 300. So I said all that to say this. This $58 million, it helps us to get the train back on the tracks and take care of some of the top priorities that are needed here within GISD, but there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of work to be done. You can imagine the wear and tear our buildings have endured since our last bond back in 2005. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have 3 kids at school here in Gainesville, so one of them goes to Edison, the other's to Chalmers, and one at the high school, so it'll be a few years.
Yeah, we'll be together for a while.
Yes. My concern may not be bond related, but I was wondering, a lot of parents, not just myself, but other parents were wondering why when they did the high school, they didn't build an auditorium, because I, as a parent, I graduated from the junior high here, which was the old high school, and at that time we would go to the NCDC, they let us borrow the building to graduate there. Why did they not build a stadium here instead of us going to Dan and see our kids graduate?
You know, I wish I could turn back the hands of time. I can't answer that question. Okay. You know, I have not the slightest idea. but
that bond failed.
That's the one that failed. Yeah. So that was one of because it failed 3 times in 2005. 2005, it passed in 2005, but it failed 3 times. So it went down every time, right?
Yeah.
Changed it up.
The athletic stuff involved at first, and then I think the auditorium, and then it took away the athletic department part, and you know, the fields and stuff.
Gotcha.
And then it finally did pass once it got what people wanted.
Yeah.
Plus, sorry, budding, and you mentioned graduation.
I'll come to you after.
One reason,
Gotcha.
And you mentioned how you used to do graduation at the college, but even with that, the amount of people that students could invite was limited. I mean, I have a sister who is 10 years older than me, and both her siblings, both her parents and both her step-parents the reason all 6 of us were able to attend was because my dad and his wife, my mom, were the announcers. If it hadn't been for my parents working for the school and helping run the graduation, they would have had to choose, okay, who stays home? Brother and sister, stepmom, stepdad, and you get your 4 people doing it, and it would take a huge facility to be able to, every student at GISD, all parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings. And it would take a lot to do that, and that's why we usually do graduation at UNT, so we don't have to tell our kids, sorry, you can't bring all of your family.
And I got asked that question early on in my tenure. Why don't we just do it right here at our auditorium? And that's the very reason why, because when I was a high school principal, that's what we had to do. My kids got 4 tickets, and so you got mom, dad, and if you got split families, that causes a lot of issue, I'll put it that way. So that's why we've elected to continue to go to UNT, so that if you had 2 people that wanted to come to your graduation or 200 people to come to your graduation, you could do so. Had this young lady right here.
Dr.
I'll come to you.
First and foremost, thank you so much
No
for,
problem.
again, increased transparency and having an honest conversation about this bond. And,
Yes, ma'am.
And regretfully, I agree, $58 million doesn't scratch the surface. My dad graduated from Gainesville in 1958. I graduated from Gainesville in 1988 and operate businesses and have a home here, and my family's here. And I look at this, and in your presentation, I would ask, it's not a question, but I would ask with additional transparency, is that you share what you shared with us tonight with regards to with the transformation and closure of F Hall to be able to move the sixth graders back to that campus, and talk about how the construct of this bond will open up opportunities to maintain the ratio and things like that. The overview is wonderful. I know you're sharing that publicly, but I think that what we've learned in this room tonight with regards, because Head Start is, I believe, in a dangerous space. It's isolated. It is 2 mobile buildings. I drive by it, and it's naturally a concern because it's so isolated near the interstate. I feel like it's a safety concern for all of us. Ultimately, being able to finally put it back into a brick and mortar is amazing, but that's something that needs to be shared publicly, because I know a lot of people weren't able to attend this meeting because we are a blue-collar community. We are a working-class community. And so it's a luxury for some of us to be able to attend this meeting tonight on a school night, on a work night. But I would love to see you integrate the conversation with regards to being able to move into the new administration building allows this to become something of significance for our youngest scholars. And the junior high with the expansion of the sixth. And just talking about, because I regret my ignorance, but I was not aware that state funding is reduced when we actually grow as we grow as a community, as we work as business owners and families, as we grow as a community, that ultimately your district is being penalized, our district is being penalized by the state. And that's something that we should take up with our state representatives with regards to that deficiency that we're creating. You say it's even. I don't believe it's even. I'm looking at the numbers and I see that this is a struggle we're going to maintain. We have exponential growth coming in the next 36 to 48 months. It's terrifying because we don't have the infrastructure for it, and it could be very crippling to the educational opportunities of our children. But again, I just want to say thank you, but I really hope that you and your team can expand what is spelled out beyond the bullet points and how that directly can impact our families.
Okay, thank you. It's great feedback. Tony, you get something?
How many seniors this year?
204.
Okay, so everybody has 4 people. You're going to put 800 people in what building around here?
It'll be a tight fit in that auditorium. A tight fit. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to mention you
Come this way. Come this way.
You spoke about the bonds that we have outstanding already that are dated, kind of aged and everything else. Well, number one, it's an investment, right? Like your house. But then where the difference is unlike your house being a single family home, we're traipsing in thousands of kids through these halls, especially since 1965. And that's just on the junior high. But, the ones that we have outstanding right now is definitely with the high school. And then what you see is we refinanced 3 of those bonds, that one bond into 3 series in 2006, reducing the amount that we're paying for interest and letting that money work for us, right? It's that old saying, if you're paying a low interest on your house, then you need to be investing your money in the stock market because you're going to get a better return. And then the inverse, if you're paying high interest in your home, pay that off, in order to build up that equity. So that's the one response I would add to Dr. Stewart's was, hey, these bonds are at such a low rate, for what we're financing. It just makes more sense, economical sense, to just keep them going, paying them, refinance when we can for lower rates, and then it extends it out. So last time was 2006, redoing those, refinancing those bonds. The last thing I just wanted to mention was, so right now the legislators, they are speaking about the $140,000 exemption, $140,000 homestead exemption. So I'm only saying that because last time they were proposing, it was like, well, they'll leave it up to y'all as a constitutional, as us, me too, for constitutional amendment. But this year, the big thing I wanted to make mention is, everybody's going to vote for it. I wouldn't know who wouldn't want to vote for a $140,000 homestead exemption. But the nice thing this year, they learned it for the $100,000 exemption. With this vote, if you are 65 years of age and older, and this passes, this time they will retroact your value of your home down to where it is not capped at at this value of your home this year. When you turn 65, if that was 5 years ago, that's where that frozen levy will come into play on that $140,000 exemption. So it's not starting in this tax year, you'll feel the effects from before. It was a settle up they did anyways, a couple years ago when they had to do the $100,000 exemption. That was one of the things that came out of that, was refreezing those levies lower than where they were at the last time they were frozen. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways.
It does.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to mention those two things.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hill. And Dr. Hill is our Chief Financial Officer. He's our CFO. Any other burning questions? Yes, sir.
And I only bring this up because y'all mentioned it at our Kiwanis meeting. Why don't you could you touch on, because y'all had brought up how some people may be concerned that, well, if the junior high is so old, the old high school, why don't we just do what we did back then and renovate a new high school, or build a new junior high, or build a new high school and move people around? Y'all went over the numbers on that I don't think y'all touched on in this PowerPoint, so maybe explain how much more that would actually.
Well, our last, and thank you for bringing that up. So our last bond that we went out for was to the tune of $70 million, and that was to take care of the junior high. That was to build, to tear down and rebuild the junior high in its current location, okay? That's common. That happens nowadays. Architectural teams have mastered that, to use a functioning building while tearing down pieces of it. They shut down a portion, tear that down, rebuild it, open up the new portion, shut down a new portion up until the entire project is complete. That middle school came in at the tune of $70 million. So now let me back up. Keep that in mind. Middle school, $70 million. We built that high school for $24.5 million, okay? So another question that I got was, well, we built a high school for $24.5 million. Why a junior high for $70 million? Well, I think we all feel the pinch when we go to the grocery stores. You know, I think, whether you're buying a car, you're buying clothes, you're buying food, everything is getting more expensive, okay? That same high school, if we were to build that same high school, same specs, with no extra learning spaces or whatnot. Jeremy, can I call on you with this one? Rough estimate. Jeremy is an architect. This is what he does. What 24? $120 million. Same building, nothing extra, built in 2025, $120 million, almost $100 million more. If we took that junior high, you're looking at $80+ million in just a matter of a couple of years. So, and that's correct. And so the overarching theme is, it's not going to get any cheaper. Construction is not going to get any cheaper. We continue to, have these conversations, but while we're having these conversations, construction prices are continuing to climb. And I'll leave that because I don't want to sound like I'm advocating for or against, but to your point, things are getting more and more expensive. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions?
I kind of had a question. So, talking about the athletic facilities from 20 years ago, I also did not go to school here. I moved here 10 years ago. But my husband had mentioned they won state in football about 20 years ago, and they got a lot of money from the state to improve facility. I mean, is that something that's right?
No.
That doesn't
No.
look like that.
No. I wish. But no. You get a trophy and a handshake and recognition on UIL website. Yeah. I'm telling you, we need some some NIL money coming through here. I'm telling you. Did I see another hand up? Yes, ma'am.
I have a slightly more immediate question, maybe. I like that intermediate's getting the new playground, but I know that the kids there aren't getting a lot of recess time. They've been pretty antsy about it. I know this might not be the best place to air that grievance, but the kids have been talking about it for a while, and I know they're not really focusing as much. Is there anything that we can do about it?
I would strong. Right. I don't have the answer to that question. I would strongly say that would be a question for the administration of that building. To my knowledge, every time I go out there, I see kids out there on the playground. So from the outside looking in, I would assume they are getting recess time. Now, what that recess, is it an hour? Is it, bless you, what that equates to minute-wise, I couldn't tell you. But what I would do is I would bring that conversation up with our building leadership to ask that very question. Yes, ma'am.
Well, just to add a bit more to context, so I'm one of the bus drivers, and pretty much it's the intermediate kids themselves that have told me, it's like whenever they're outside, that's them at gym class. That's not recess.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're like, is there a way that we could have like a dedicated like recess instead of just being like, oh, sometimes you go outside during gym if like maybe the weather's nice?
Well, and again, I would say that's
a different set of, like that's a different.
but also what I would say is, as kids get older, it's kind of like nap time. Our little ones have nap time, and as they get older.
In sixth grade, we still had recess and gym class.
Yeah.
Because like I know I would have been a little hellion if I didn't get recess when I was in fifth grade.
Well, I would definitely pose those questions to the building administration because, I mean, just in all transparency, I do not have the answer to that question.
So when we look at this bond and we have all these local businesses here, one of the pressing questions that I've been getting from local business owners is this going to be an open bid? Can you explain to them what that'll look like?
Well, and that will be a conversation that will happen. You want to talk to that, Joe? Go ahead.
Well, normally because of the magnitude and the amount of money, we are mandated by the state to take it out to a competitive seal process. Well, there's a couple of different avenues we can take. We encourage the general contractors. In fact, I had a pre-bid meeting here on Thursday morning. We encourage them to utilize our preferred vendors that we utilize here in town also. Unfortunately, sometimes that just doesn't happen because of the sheer size of whatever the project may be. Some of them can't quite handle it. I know we have used Parker Electric when we did, for example, the ag facility out there. They provide all of our electric. We use a lot of local people for general everyday projects and things like that. But generally speaking, when you go out to a bond, you have to go to a bid process, and it's entirely up to the GC. But now, will they provide us with a list of their subs? Absolutely. Can we recommend local subs? Yes, and we do.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Any other questions? Well, let me say this in closing. First of all, let me thank you all again for being here this evening. It means a lot to me to see people in the seats here to really hear the story from the horse's mouth. But also know that if you happen to walk out of that door and a question pops up, you're at home, and a question pops up, please, if you'll email me directly or call my office, I will get back with you and let you answer your question, okay? Shoot me an email, give me a call. I'll be more than happy to answer your question. A lot of information, our presentations from the Facility Steering Committee, because I had that question brought up, the process. If you go to our homepage and go up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see Bond 2025. All of your information is right there. But again, if there's a burning question that you have or some rumblings that you hear out in the community that you are not sure or 100% true and valid, email me, call me, and I'll get you the answer. Okay? With that being said, of course, I'm going to stick around. I'm here to answer any questions if you want to ask any questions afterwards. But again, thank you all for being here, and y'all enjoy the rest of your night.